Imagine being in 19th century China, being treated by a local doctor for free, and then learning that the doctor was addicted to opium. As was everyone else's reaction, you immediately thought less of him, and you kind of question his ability as a doctor. If he's addicted to opium, maybe he's not the greatest. But who can say no to a free health checkup? Then you see him going to church day in, day out, attending confession constantly, and always praying. Maybe he isn't just someone addicted to opium. Maybe there's more to the story. Howdy y'all, and welcome back to another episode of the Sanctified Podcast, the show where we explore the stories of various saints throughout history and learn about what they did and how we came to recognize them as saints today. Today, we're going to explore the life of Saint Mark Ji Tiangxiang, an addict who never gave up. Now, I am a day late. I wanted to get this out on time, but work has just been insane. I just haven't had the time to work on this week's episode like I was hoping. And it is a shorter episode, but it does carry a very strong message with it, and I think everybody could benefit from hearing it. So, without any further ado, let's get into Mark's story. Saint Mark Ji Tiangxiang was born in the Jiangsu district of Hangzhou, China, in the Zili region in 1834. The only atypical thing of his youth was that his family was Catholic in a region where Catholicism wasn't super common. It wasn't rare, but it wasn't very common. For a decent portion of his life, he was just an ordinary boy. Though he was fairly intelligent and he became a doctor in his region, he was by no means an exceptionally renowned doctor, though he was very good at his job, and he was known to give his services for free just because it went along with his faith. In all honesty, he was really a fairly typical man. He was faithful to his religion and committed to his work and family. Mark helped numerous people with all different kinds of afflictions, from things as simple as cuts and scrapes, to colds, to broken bones, to stomach problems, you name it, he would help. But, as you could expect from a doctor, he eventually caught a nasty stomach bug from one of his patients, and he really just could not bear it. He knew the standard prescription at the time, but he didn't want to use it. It wasn't until the pain just grew to be too much that he finally resorted to using that prescription. Mark prepared the medicine one night, and then he took it. You might be wondering, what was this common prescription for a nasty stomach pain? Opium. Mark started feeling better right away. His discomfort disappeared. So he thought to himself that it was working. And he was like, you know what? I'm going to take another dosage tomorrow, just in case. Whether or not he was still really sick, we don't know. He probably was a little bit sick, but he probably didn't need the opium. But he told himself that he was going to be on the safe side. Little did he know that it was just the start of the addiction. And you can already guess, after that second dose, you know where this is going. From that point on, Mark became addicted to opium. And at that time in China, any addiction was just considered shameful. And Mark hated that he was addicted. But with how addictions work, he struggled to do anything to stop it. And we kind of know how it is today. Addictions aren't something you can just drop right away and easily. It's really hard. He attended confession pretty frequently, embarrassed and ashamed by his addiction. And he was constantly praying for help, but he just couldn't shake the addiction. It was an addiction. As he was wont to do, he continued offering free treatments to patients, and maybe he was hoping that his generosity would help with divine intervention. At first, his priest would absolve him of this addiction, of his sin, but after continuous visits confessing the same sin over and over, the priest began to question if Mark truly sought help and saving. Despite his honest remorse about his addiction in confession, Mark's confessor eventually denied him absolution and said he couldn't receive communion until he could get rid of this addiction. And that was a devastating blow to Mark. He wanted to receive communion. He wanted to receive the Holy Host, but he couldn't go against what the priest told him, and so he just kept praying, attending services without receiving communion, and trying to attend confession. Mark went on like this for 30 years. And all along the way, attending confession, praying, helping others, and fighting his addiction. During those 30 years, Mark was actually told to stop coming to confession. Again, because the priest thought that he wasn't sincere in his confessions. But he wanted help battling his addiction. And so he just kept on chugging along, going to confession, despite what the priest would say. Because it was, in a way, all a misunderstanding at the time. People thought the addiction was just something he chose, not something that his body needed. Unfortunately, before Mark could shake his addiction, the Boxer Rebellion broke out. And in short, this rebellion was focused on stopping the influence of foreign powers. And one of the big influences they were against was Christianity. The Boxers, so named because they believed fists were better than actual weapons, fought from 1899 until 1901 when they were defeated, again because they used martial arts instead of firearms and other weapons. Unfortunately, though, some of the damage was already done. On July 7th, 1900, Mark Ji Tiangxiang was gathered up with about 120 other Christians by the Boxers. They were told to renounce their faith, and Mark, being as devoted as he was, didn't hesitate to say no. He knew that meant he would be killed, but he was okay with that. His only request was to be killed last, so that he could be with his family, so that they wouldn't have to die alone as martyrs. They could die with someone else. Of course, that meant that he would be alone when he was executed, but he was ready. He was willing. He knew the right thing to do. Mark was canonized on October 1st, 2000, along with the other Chinese martyrs. Mark Ji Tiangxiang's feast day is July 7th, which is the day that he was arrested, and he is also commonly celebrated a couple days later on July 9th with the other Chinese martyrs. And you probably guess, Mark is the patron saint of drug addicts. This is a shorter episode, and I do try to avoid tangents when going over the saints. Sometimes I get off a little bit, but I feel like I really want to drive home one other point, and Mark is a really great example of what it means to be a saint. Because every time I hear people talking about saints in other podcasts and other shows in real life and social media, there's always a big misunderstanding, and they seem to think that a saint lived a perfect life. They did no wrong. It was all justice. It was all rainbows and butterflies. Like the examples of living saints that people say, oh, they're a living saint. They always carry the implication that they did nothing wrong in their lives. But it's also very common for recent saints that people will talk about their unsaintly actions. They did a couple of things that weren't perfect. Just because someone's a saint doesn't mean they didn't make mistakes. Mark struggled with addiction for 3 decades, but his faith never dimmed. If anything, it grew stronger. Things like addiction or other sins lead people away from God and start them down a path that feels irredeemable, and it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think you can't be saved or helped, you're not going to seek it, so it's never going to happen. And remember, the definition of a saint is simply someone who is known to be in heaven, either through miracles that they performed while they were alive or from heaven, or from martyrdom for their faith, as was in Mark's case. You might think an addict would say anything to stay alive just to get that next hit. But no, that's not always the case, and Mark proves that. Faith and love can outweigh anything else, no matter how insurmountable an obstacle may feel. So just keep in mind, next time you hear somebody talk about, oh, Mother Teresa wasn't that great, she did blah, blah, blah. Yeah, maybe she did do some things that weren't absolutely perfect. Maybe she did things you don't agree with. But she did a lot of great things. And there's all sorts of other saints who would carry the same story. Saints like Moses the Strong. He was a criminal. He led a criminal gang and killed people probably. But that doesn't mean he can't be a saint too. He didn't continue that lifestyle. He realized it was wrong. He changed his ways. So everybody can be saved. Nobody is lost, no matter how irredeemable it may seem. If you have any questions about Saint Mark Ji Tiangxiang, let me know, and I'll do my best to answer them. So what are your thoughts on Saint Mark? What about his struggle with addiction? I hope you found his story interesting and inspiring, because could you imagine being addicted for 30 years, always trying to shake it, but never giving up hope that something will help, something will happen to change it? I look forward to learning your thoughts on Saint Mark Ji Tiangxiang, and thanks for listening. If you'd like to support the channel, you can subscribe, download the episode, like, comment, share it with your friends, or send me a suggestion on a saint to check out by emailing me at sanctifiedpodcast@proton.me. You can find the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Podbean, and more. Just search for the Sanctified Podcast on whatever service you're using, and I should have a few episodes uploaded. If I don't, let me know. I'll get right on that. Take care, and have a wonderful day.